Welcome back, everybody, to the Fantasy Golf Bag Podcast. I'm your host, Redkacheek, also go by Drew, and this week we are previewing the Wyndham Championship. Only a couple more weeks left of the 2025 FedEx Cup season. It's all in like 2025. It's funny how they name this season now. So, like you guys know, it used to be a wraparound where the fall started the season. Really weird. It started in September or October. Wrapped around to January. The Century Tournament Champions used to be the first event of the season, and it wasn't. But now they changed it where the fall swing is part of the 2025 season, but it's not part of the FedEx Cup. So it's a weird dynamic, I guess, on whatever they're calling it nowadays. But for the 2025 FedEx Cup season, we only have a couple more weeks left. So we'll be previewing the Wyndham Championship. Obviously, Fantasy Golf Bag, we have a couple new tools, so it's going to help us out a little bit this week, not to go down a crazy long road digging into the time machine stuff. So excited to show you guys some of that stuff to help us out. And we'll be around, obviously, throughout the fall swing. Obviously, football is going to take up most people's attention, which is deservedly so. It's very fun, big contests, etc. So hopefully you guys can hang around with us at Fantasy Golf Bag. Like I said last week, we have new live data up, which was, I think the guys can correct me. We have a pretty loyal live chat in the Fantasy Golf Bag Discord, but I think we had pretty good bets last week. And then Neiman is just the Scheffler of live and completely ruins everything. So it was a really good when they start Friday, really good Friday. Neiman goes off and does something stupid on Saturday. It's a 3-day event, obviously. So after Saturday, you pretty much, if someone's got a 6-shot lead, it's pretty much over. So a little bit frustrating there. But all's to say, we have live data, and it was really helpful, I think. We had 2 guys inside the top 8, if I'm not mistaken, after Friday. And we're going to continue to do that, obviously. And then obviously with the fall swing stuff, everything will be status quo. So with football rolling around, my thing is this is a good opportunity for you to check out Fantasy Golf Bag, if not for the tools and the research, which will certainly be eye-opening, I think, for like just digging into the course preview stuff, the spectrum data, the stat model, a lot of our IQ tools. You can at least hop into the Discord and you will see how many people have put their ideas forward for wanting new tools and new insights. And all of that has been basically built to their wish list, which is exactly what it's called. That's the channel that everybody puts their stuff in. But encourage you guys to check it out if you haven't already. Only a couple weeks left. But like I said, we'll be full throttle through the fall swing. A lot of new additions to the website. And I think you guys will be quite impressed if you do check it out. As always, you can reach out to me at Redkacheek on Twitter, or if you hop in the Discord, you can always DM me. As everyone knows, I'm very responsive to a fault, I think, because I'll respond to someone at 12 a.m. I'll respond to someone at 3 a.m., 6 a.m. It's never ending. So let's go ahead and dive into the Wyndham Championship, and let's use some of the new data that we have this week. So trying to clean up as much stuff as we can on the website. And obviously during the fall swing slows down a little bit. It's funny enough, though. It's such a quick turnaround between Sunday afternoon / evening into Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Like it's a 3-day turnaround for an event. And it's 3 days may seem like a lot, but when you have like football, guys can finish up Sunday and a little bit Monday with the showdown slate, Monday night slate. You got Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday into Sunday to get everything ready. Golf is a pretty quick turnaround. So like we jam in a lot of updates throughout this season. So pretty proud of that. But it will be nice to kind of let down the pressure a bit when the fall swing rolls around, and we can kind of bump in a lot of the updates, the global tour updates that we're going to have for next year. So let's see. The easy stuff is we updated the navigation, the IQ tools. If you guys are watching on the YouTube or Spotify, you can see this. But if you go to fantasygolfbag.com at the top, you'll see IQ tools listed out. So this is where all of our new tools, we're just going to kind of stick with the IQ branding. That's kind of the inside idea, I guess, is all these. So lineup IQ, where you can optimize and simulate your lineups, player IQ, driving IQ, approach IQ, like the custom course profiling, course fit stuff, which is we've talked about quite a bit on this podcast this season, spectrum IQ, and matchup IQ, which we just introduced this week, which I think is pretty interesting. It is free to use for most of it, and then the detailed history is for pro subscribers for now. But you can type in a player, type in another player, see their historical wins. You can also filter on rounds, courses, events, or years and see if their history has changed. If round 4 is different than round 1, for example. So, and then the other thing is clearing up the search function. So like this week, if you wanted to look up Aaron Rye, you type that in, you'll see when the player profiles pops up, you'll have the shot shape analysis. So draw or fade and their percentage of shots, draw or fade, their performance radar. And then at the very bottom, everything else is pretty much the same. At the very bottom, you'll now see obviously the driver performance, their club head speed, ball speed, apex, total spin, their spin rate, and you'll get a nice chart of their recent shots. You can see Aaron Rye is pretty straight. It's sickening actually how straight he is off the tee. I mean, he's got a 40-yard wide gap in his dispersion, which is just sick. But then at the bottom, you can see the round by round details, which is the same as at the stat model. So let's dive into the Course Preview Pro. Let's get started because one of the things I want to look at is the time machine, but we'll use something from the Course Preview Pro, which we just added last week, I guess. This week, Wyndham Clark Championship, the Wyndham Championship, Sedgefield Country Club. If anything, it'd be the Webb Championship, Wyndham Championship, Webb Wyndham Championship. We got the Sedgefield Country Club last 5 winners. Aaron Rye -18, Lucas Glover -20, Tom Kim -20, Kevin Kisner -15, and Jim Herman -21. A little bit interesting for several years ago where this tournament didn't matter as much. Guys were pretty much locked into the FedEx Cup. They didn't have to play here. It changed a bit the last couple of years. So you'll see a bit stronger field. 2022, Tom Kim being a winner. And we'll look at the lead-in stats and stuff here in a second. Lucas Glover in 2023 and 2024 for Aaron Rye. I would say the winning score, which we have down here, but like the last couple of years is right at 19, 20 under par, which is pretty good for a par 70. So Sedgefield's a par 70, 7,100 yards. I think this is probably one of the most specific course fits you can see on tour. Like RBC Heritage is probably number one. Like you really are handcuffed off the tee. You can't do much. This is probably right there behind it. So Sedgefield's a par 70, 7,100 yards. Architect is Donald Ross. So I already know some people are curious about the Donald Ross Architect history, which is fair. I think if you looked at our stuff and you read, our research, the sample size is the biggest factor in looking at any of that stuff. You either have to go back so far to get decent sample size, or you're using like the last 2 years and you have like 12 rounds or less. And I'm not sure you can really, and that's for like the most. So I'm not sure you can really get much input from that. Average par 3, 201. I feel like that's been the last couple weeks. So it's like kind of on the longer side for par 3s as far as distance wise. Average par 4, 437. That's on the shorter end. And then average par 5, 537. That is also on the shorter end. So the par 3s are really long. Everything else around this golf course is relatively short. And you'll see in the scoring, you can see the hole by holes here. Every hole is pretty much even par. We'll give it, plus or minus 0.05 shots. Plus or minus, over or under par. It's basically a flat golf course except for the par 5s, hole 5 and hole 15, and hole 8, which is a par 4. It measures 374, so a short drivable wedge hole. And then hole 13 405, also a short wedge hole. Everything else is pretty much even par, give or take a tenth of a shot. Nothing too crazy. It's we'll get into the details of the course. Like I said, this is a very specific course fit, course style. The hole by holes kind of draw that out a little bit, though. It's the par fives or the scoring. Everything else is you can make birdies. You're probably making a lot of pars. You make some birdies and you're really getting a leg up. So, course profile stats. This is the new section. So this is the lead-in stat correlation. Let's come back to that at the next step, just to make sure everything is kind of in line with what you guys are typically used to in this podcast. The average winning score, 19.5 under par. Average cut line, 3 under par. Driving distance, 302.8, which I think was a little bit surprising to people. And I hope people look at that, honestly. I hope people just look at the driving distance and think this is a driver's heavy golf course, because they'll be very, very well misled with what this golf course actually demands off the tee. So we'll get into that in just a second. But yeah, driving distance, completely irrelevant this week. I will go 100% on record. Don't worry about driving distance, and you'll see why in just a second. But it is up over the tour average, so just keep that in mind. It's an interesting dynamic and something we've talked about all year with lead-in stats and like the driving distance distribution, stuff like that. But yeah, it's a very funny. I'm hovering over the chart right now if you're watching the video, but you can see the driving distance has no real effect on finish position. But the average drive is, 4 yards over the average drive on the PGA Tour. So it's a very interesting dynamic. Driving accuracy, 61.2, basically tour average. We'll call that tour average. Need to fix the hovers now that they are off the screen. But driving accuracy, definitely important, but it is right around the tour average. Missed fairway penalty is up a little bit. Definitely don't want to be missing fairways here. Distance penalty is under the field average for the PGA Tour. Distance is not a big deal. So like I just talked about, driving distance at 302, it's up over the tour average. But we also know that driving distance is not a factor in terms of edge in a player's skill set this week. And we also have correlations, which we'll look at in just a second. Proximity is down quite a bit. Guys are definitely hitting it closer because you have a lot of wedges and mid irons in here this week. Green regulation percent is also up. So it's second shot golf course, yes, but hitting it close is really the name of the game. And then putting is unfortunately a big part of the game this week. But if you're driving it decent, which most guys are going to, have to drive, cater to the holes and drive it okay, approach isn't a huge factor. Besides, if you can hit it a little bit closer than the field, obviously that makes a difference. You can see here in the proximity by finish position, it's, what do you got? Top 25 averaging 30 feet or 31 feet, and top 10 averaging 30 feet. The winner averaging 29 feet. So basically a 2 feet difference between the top 25 and the winner on average, which it is a lot. That is it's not nothing. 2 feet on average is still a pretty good amount, but you're going to be looking for guys that are hitting their wedges good. And we'll talk about all that in just a second. All right. Everything else is pretty much status quo. Birdie or better, bogey or worse is down. Obviously, we understand that. Green regulation from the rough, missed green regulation from the fairway, all up. Basically, all the approach stuff is easier than the tour average. Now, the cool stuff is we now have the lead-in stat correlations, which is what we kind of tinkered with the last couple of weeks with the time machine, which I would encourage everybody listening to check it out at least once. I think it would revolutionize your research in a simple, effective manner to check things against prior years. And either A, you could hit the nuts as far as like, this probably isn't the best week to hit the nuts, because we'll look at the correlations here in a second, but there's certainly some weeks where you could go back. You think about majors and some of the signature events on tougher golf courses is kind of in this ballpark. But you could basically hit the nuts on exactly the stats and the weights on what you need to use in the stat model, and you'll basically have 10 of the top 10 in your top 20. It's year over year. It's very, very, very predictive. If not for that reason, you can see how volatile everything you do from a stat model perspective. That's why projections are such a big factor for me and most of the users at Fantasy Golf Bag. But you'll see why just, oh yeah, I'll just look at strokes gained approach and strokes gained off the tee. Cool. How does that do? Oh, let's go back to the last couple of years. Well, you got 3 guys in your top 10 that finished in the top 15. Good. And the other guys missed the cut. Okay, so you had 12 out of 15 guys miss the cut, and you had 3 in the top 15. Yeah, that's not good. So it's at least revealing to a course what lead-in stats are valuable, what lead-in stats are not valuable, and how volatile the golf is. And I think one thing that I've heard from a few people is it helps their lineup construction in understanding the volatility of not just catering strictly to their model rankings and thinking, okay, these are the guys in the top 10. I really need to play a lot of them. Well, if you go back and use that over the last couple of years, you'll see that half of those guys missed the cut. So maybe you set a rule that your top 10, you want to use at least 2, but no more than 3. Like, you don't want to just jam in everybody in your top 10 in your model rankings. There's a lot of flaws in how, the field strength is adjusted and stuff like that, which we have field strength adjusted numbers, which are fantastic. But yeah, that's all to say. Definitely check out the time machine. You can use it and think about, how you can use it to your advantage. One is understanding the volatility in golfers' performance into an event. And also you can go back to an event and find out, like, man, this is pretty simple. Just plugging in off the tee and a little bit of approach, and I'm basically all the way there. There you go. It just simplifies your entire week, really. Okay, so let's get back on track. Lead and stat correlations, similar to last week. Total strokes gained, very predictive. Strokes gained tee to green, also very predictive. I have talked about this for several years now. When we start to break out strokes gained, which originally was strictly strokes gained putting and strokes gained tee to green, when you start to break out the tee to green aspect, you start to get really wonky in guys' flaws. One, which again, everyone knows about the concepts behind spectrum, but when you start to break out strokes gained tee to green, there's a give and take between off the tee and approach. And there's guys that'll lose strokes off the tee, gain strokes on approach, doing okay. But when you start to weight them separately, all of a sudden you're going to miss out on those guys. The same way Bryson gains strokes off the tee and loses strokes on approach. If you overweight approach, which he's been admittedly very bad, the 4 events or 3 events he's played, quote unquote PGA Tour events, majors this year, you're just going to go down a really bad dark hole of emphasizing the wrong thing when players actually try to do a lot collectively from a strokes gained tee to green perspective. You kind of got to build that all in. So again, we're very numbers based, trying to help everybody understand the data behind golf. Total strokes gained, the number 1 most predictive stack to the next round. You think about what if I had to predict tomorrow's round, you take whatever someone shot today. Now you can start to splice it a little bit more, but total strokes gained is still the number 1 most predictive to the next day. Strokes gained tee to green is next. Obviously, a big chunk is off the tee and approach, a little bit of around the green, but the collective grouping of everything from the tee to the green is very predictive. And again, just talking about this golf course, but broadly speaking, it holds pretty true. Bogeys are worse. This is bogey avoidance, probably bad terminology there. Bogeys are worse is very predictive. And I honestly like this stat quite a bit. I brought it up last week, and a couple guys in the chat talked about it. And I will say this, from a playing perspective, when you think about a golfer in a birdie fest, and everyone wants to go target the birdies are better, which there's a big drop between, you can see it here in the video, bogeys are worse, the birdies are better. Like, Birdies are better is still valuable, sure. But bogeys or worse is more valuable than birdies. And I think people overlook that concept. Like, what leads to bogeys or worse or bogey avoidance? One is hitting a lot of greens, hitting good tee shots, hitting good approach shots, not making the putts. That avoids bogeys. You're not going to pick up guys doing well tee to green, or I should say doing poorly tee to green and also avoiding bogeys. They're going to do, you're just going to cut them out based on the tee to green number. So bogey or worse is such a good, valuable stat. It's like, honestly, if you wanted to boil that down to like a cheat code, you could say, hey, these guys are undervalued. They're not making a lot of bogeys. They're likely, without even knowing proximity numbers, they're likely hitting pretty good approach shots, good tee shots, and just not making enough putts to make birdies. But the bogeys are not going to come because they're hitting so many greens. So like, it all kind of goes hand in hand. So long-winded story, the top three is total strokes gained tee to green, bogeys or worse. If you run a model in our stat model with those three stats, those are the best plays on the week, guaranteed. The next couple are birdie or better, IQ stat, which we've talked about a little bit. It's a proprietary stat, but basically it's like a weighted proximity stat with spectrum and strokes gained. It's somewhat complex, but I added that into the correlation sheet so you can see when that really pops. It's a top 5 stat in correlations. It's pretty good. Green regulation is next. Strokes gained approach is next. Driving accuracy is next. So all those are valuable in and of themselves. But if you wanted to really boil this down into how am I going to get the closest to historical lead-in performance, I want to look at guys doing the best total strokes gained. I wanted to look at guys doing the best tee to green, doing the best bogey or worse, bogey avoidance, birdie or better, IQ stat, done. That's pretty much it. You can go down a little bit more. You can add an approach, green regulation. Like I said, I think you start to double count a little bit, but long-winded. We'll look at all this stuff in the time machine here in just a second. Sorry, we went down going all over the place, but hopefully that helps, because I think in the many years, what have I been doing? 7 years now. People have this like preconceived notion that all that matters in PGA DFS or betting is picking out the guys that are the best with their irons and maybe okay with their driver, or, really good with their driver and like okay with their irons. Basically, it all boils down to that. And that's not true. Like, there's ways we can find spike performances coming up, but looking at an entire field of players, going to broader stats is absolutely the best approach you can do for your bankroll, for your process. And then if you want to go look into spike stuff, like Spectrum Edge is a good example, you add in those guys or bump them up or bump out the negatives. Like, that's the way you want to do it. But you don't just want to just hammer the good approaches and hammer the guys that are gaining off the tee. There's a lot more to it and a lot less to it in a certain way. So it's important to just talk about this. And like I said, we go through this quite a bit in the Fantasy Golf Bag Discord, but it's very important to understand the variance and like, is what you're even looking at valuable for the week? And like right now, I guarantee you people are looking at driving accuracy, which I don't mind it, especially in the driving IQ tool. They'll look at proximity. They'll look at off the tee. They'll look at putting. Putting has none. Driving distance has a negative correlation. Like, people have no idea what they do on a given week. They just kind of plug in stuff thinking that's the best thing. Back test it. You gotta figure out what's actually real and what you're just making up in your mind. So I'll get off my soapbox. Let's keep going. My nose is just oh god. We were late on a Monday. I should have had this out on Sunday, to be honest. All right. Course comparisons. Let's breeze through this really quick in the lead-in form for the winners, and then we'll hop in the time machine and look at the correlations. Nose is real itchy. take out the winner, as always. Hopefully that was helpful, by the way. You guys can always comment and yell at me on Twitter or yell at me in Discord. Always happy to cut something out. I feel like we understand. We're not stupid. We get it. Yeah, I'm totally fine with adjusting my approach, but I hear that all the time, and I know from my own experience, honestly, that it's very easy to hear the same name brand stats every week and think that's just what it takes every week, and that's not the case. So, gotta keep going back to the soapbox. Let's get off. Stroke gain by finish position. Tee to green is big. Approach is the biggest like ball striking stat. You can see off the tee is pretty mitigated. Approach has a big bump off of the made cut to the top 25 and then to the top 10. And then putting is a really big jump from the top or the made cut to the top 25. Not a big jump to the top 10, but to be a winner, there's another big jump. There's a bigger jump, honestly, from the top 10 finishers on average to the winner compared to the made cut finishers in the top 25 or top 10, even honestly, the top 10. So the putting's a big difference maker in the winner, not the biggest difference in, top 10 finishers. So keep that in mind. I would say approach is number one. Again, this is all strokes gained in the event, not lead in, not to be confused. Driving distance distribution. This is where I thought the distance was funny. 310 to 330, there's one tee shot. So that's definitely on the longer side. That is hole number one. It's a downhill hole. 317.2 is the average drive. 290 to 310, there are four holes. 270 to 290, four holes. 250 to 270, four holes. 230 to 290 or 230 to 290. 230 to 250 is one hole. So the meat and potatoes of this golf course is basically, it sounds like a big range, 250 to 310. But if you break this out into buckets, like there's four tee shots between 260 and 270. There are four tee shots between 270 and 283. There are four tee shots between 300 and 308. So it's very segmented, which was, go back to my initial point on specific course fit. This is very easy to model in the driving IQ tool, which we'll not get to today, but would encourage you guys to check it out. It's very easy to go plug in 33% for those three buckets and get down to driving accuracy. Obviously, driving distance doesn't matter. I don't hate off the tee, but definitely bump up driving accuracy. And let's just see who actually drives it the best in those three buckets separately, not collectively off the tee, just in those three buckets, who hits the most fairways. And that's what I want to look at this week. Approach distance distribution, pretty even, honestly. 50 to 125, what is that? 17%, 16%. 125 to 150, 17%. 175 to 200, 19%. 200 plus, 21%. And the biggest range, which I skipped, is 150 to 175 is 27%. So all in all, to be completely fair, this is a pretty evenly spread golf course on approaches. 150 to 175 is a little bit higher, but you're talking like, 10% higher than all the other ranges. It's not a huge difference. So I would weight that higher in approach IQ in our approach IQ tool, but I wouldn't go crazy thinking that's the number one bucket. I just have to really get the guy that's doing the best there. No, it's pretty spread out. If you just wanted to use spectrum approach or strokes gained approach, you'd probably be pretty close. But yeah, it's pretty easy to just do a 20% ramp between each bucket and have a nice model in approach IQ. We looked at the winners. You can see the last couple winners definitely had really good stat profiles. The two in the middle, Kevin Kisner and Jim Herman, had pretty rough ones. And then the last few after that, the last five, were all pretty good. Henrik Stenson makes an appearance. Brandt Snedeker. Davis Love III, 2015. I think he'd be older than that. So let's go ahead and dive into the time machine. I know we're spending precious time here. Let's remember our stats that we just talked about: total strokes gained, tee to green, bogey or worse, and birdie or better. So we did have a new improvement to stat model. You can save, duplicate, save as, make a new model, open model. There's a model fusion, which we'll talk about in the coming weeks. It's available, but it's in beta. But yeah, anything you make in a model, you can save. And you change the time frames, the filters, you can save it and come back to your work. Just makes it easy. So let's do, we want to do a time machine. So let's do that. Let's do 2024 Wyndham Championship. Travel back in time. So we are now on the 2024 Wyndham Championship field, and we're going to run a model based on the correlations we just talked about. So pretty easy. I can just do a custom here. Strokes gained total. I'm also going to pull in our field strength adjusted total, and let's just see if that is a little bit better. Tee to green, we'll do the same thing. Tee to green for both. Scoring and performance is our bogey or worse and birdie or better. And I will also bring in our IQ stat because it is typically you always get the winner in the top 10. Like you could literally bet the top 10 in the IQ stat every week, and the winner is in there every single time. Except for this time. Let's check. Yep, the winner is in the top 10. It happens every single week. If you just sort the IQ stat on the last 12 events, last 24 rounds, in the top 10, the winner is always in there every single week. All right. Everything else looks pretty good. I don't like to do a ton of filters because you start to shrink the sample size quite a bit. Let's try to do, I don't think there's any more rounds. Yeah, that's all right. We'll just do last 12 rounds, last 12 events, last 30 rounds. And let's weight this a little bit. So strokes gained total was number one. Let's start with this adjusted strokes gained total. It's usually better. So let's do like 25% there. Tee to green was close. Let's do 22.5. Bogey or worse. Another 20. Birdie or better. Let's do 15. And then IQ stat 15. We got a little bit left. So let's just add 2.5 to a normal strokes gained total. There we go. If we ran this in 2024, the top three is Sungjae Im, T41, Davis Thompson, T12, Aaron Rai, first place. That's great. We still get the missed cuts, as happens every week, and that's why I encourage you guys to check out the time machine to see how realistic your top 10 are every week. Like getting the winner in there is great. For DFS, you still need to go down a little bit further and try to get, a bigger pool. You're not going to hit the nuts in the top 10. And just unfortunately, the volatility is pretty high. But this gives you a really good starting point. We got a miscut, Robert McIntyre, Brian Harmon, Jonathan Vegas made the cut, not great. Zane Hoot, T22, Keith Mitchell, T12, Luke Clanton, 5th, Cameron Young, T22. So this is pretty good. We can go back to 23, and then we'll jump to the present year in just a second. So this is 23. We got, I bet, in the top 10 again. IQ stat is the winner. Number one's the winner, actually. Lucas Glover was number one in the IQ stat, and he won that event. IQ stat is just, it's amazing. It's fucking amazing. Okay. Model number one, Hideki. This is model numbers. This is all using our, combined stats, not just the IQ stat. IQ stat probably would have just been fine. Hideki missed the cut. Russell Henley finished second. He was number 2. Shane Lowry finished 51st. He was number 3. The rest of this top 7, not great. And then Lucas Glover was first. Adam Scott was 7th. Ben Yon was 2nd. Stefan Jaeger was 14th. Cam Davis was T7. This is pretty good. Like I said, we're still going to hit some landmines. The goal is to not, the goal is to be diverse enough where this doesn't just completely derail our lineups or our week. But you can see here, like, these are all great plays. They didn't work out, just part of the business. So let's do one more year, 2022. Wyndham Championship. Let's go back in time to 2022. Let's sort. Let's check the IQ stat. This might be one occasion we didn't get a winner. Let's see. No, we got second place and we got a fifth place. The winner came from 36th in the IQ stat. Real bad. We got a real bad week that week. So let's go back to the model rankings. Same thing we did the last couple events or last couple years. Our top 8, we'll just do the top 10 actually. T21, Will Zalatoris. T2, Sung J M. T13, Pendrith. T13th, Wise. Welcome back, Wise. T5, Russell Henley. T13. This was a really good year. Like if you ran this just fucking naked, you would have had a really good week. A really good week. And that's kind of what we're hoping for this week. Tom Kim was the winner. He was 13th in our model. So let's exit. Let's get to our current year. And let's see what's going on. I'm going to list out the top 10. So, and then I'll do the IQ stat just for you guys. We'll see what, who the winner is or who could be the winner in the top 10. The model number, again, using the exact same stuff we used from the last 3 years. Number 1, Ben Griffin. Keegan Bradley, number 2. Then it's Jordan Spieth, Matt Fitzpatrick, Kurt Kitayama, mostly off of the last 2 events he played, but still recent form is something to be said for. Harry Hall, number 6. Ryan Fox, number 7. Adam Scott, number 8. Nikolai Hogard, number 9. And Lucas Glover, number 10. The IQ stat, which I'll just list really quickly, but hopefully that helps if you guys are taking notes, which I know I used to when I was getting started in DFS. I would always listen to shows for an NBA or NFL and jot down names and make sure I played the right names. And I'm not saying these are the right names, but if you're going to play a pool lineups, these guys should definitely be in your pool. That's what I will say. IQ stat, Nikolai Hogar is number 1, Kurt Kitayama number 2, Ben Coles number 3, Rosenmuller number 4, Ben Griffin number 5, Rico Hoey number 6, who is interesting because he is 60th in the model, but 6th in the IQ stat. So you can take that either way you want. Very poor strokes gained total numbers. That's really where it gets weighed down. And there's something to be said for that as well. So not being able to score is a skill set. Like, honestly, if you can't score, there's a problem there, even if your IQ stat looks great. So William Mao number 7. Michael Thorbjornsen after a WD looked awful. He's number 8. Stephen Fisk, number 9, kind of interesting. And Victor Perez, which I could definitely see winning this week. He's at 6,900. He is 10th in the IQ stat. So that is the top 10. And also in the model, that's a pretty good starting point. And the coolest thing too is we can do, let's do 25 Wyndham Championship podcast. I can save my model. And now anytime I want to come back, this is my model. I can come back to, next year for the Wyndham Championship. I can come back and use my exact same weights I used, everything. So if I win 100,000 this week, next year I can come back and run the exact same thing. No issues. And I can just be consistent with my process. Very easy. So, okay. I think we're good, guys. We ran not too bad, 40 minutes. Could be worse, could be better. Hopefully that was helpful. I know we went on a few tangents there, talking through some stats and understanding some of the volatility and the correlations. They're just important concepts. And I think, again, we being a little bit biased, I think we have really good tools at Fantasy Golf Bag. But if, above all else, just understanding the data and helping people make better decisions, that's what I really want to do. So hopefully that does help. Hopefully that helps you better understand, like there's no clear cut, perfect ball striking model. We do the best we can. There's a lot of tools at our disposal. Certainly at Fantasy Golf Bag, we didn't look at the IQ tools like the approach IQ or driving IQ, which is going to be a heavy part of my process this week. But at the end of the day, you could go through the highest correlated stats, which are going to do very well most weeks. There's still going to be landmines mixed in your top 10. It's just part of it. So keep that in mind as you build lineups. Don't get too strong on just your top ranked guys. Just understand the volatility behind what goes into those numbers and what goes into golf, etc. So I think that's it, guys. Check us out, fantasygolfbag.com. Appreciate you guys tuning in this season. We are going to keep it rolling. There's no slowing down for us, but I know people have different priorities. I totally understand. So best of luck this week. We're going to have a great week. I know it. It's feeling, man, we were close last week. We were close for the Open Championship Millie Maker. Last week was great until fucking Sunday. We're gonna have a good week. We're definitely gonna close out the year strong. So we'll see you guys in the chat. Best of luck this week. See you guys.